new, current, whatever you want to call him, code enforcement officer who were basically in charge at the time. And because they put the pool in, I never asked to go look for the permits, didn't expect what was coming. In the middle of October, I come out one morning and hear my neighbors putting in an 8-foot-high privacy fence in their backyard, 15 inches inside of their previous chain link fence. Okay, there's the scenario, not hard to picture. I have pictures on my phone if you do want to see it. But I went out there and I inquisitively asked the fence guys, are you taking down the old fence? The answer was no. So now I have an 8-foot privacy fence that runs the length of my neighbor's house as well as my property, clearly visible from the street, and never a certificate of appropriateness is not on file, because I went back and checked every single village board, because there were people who did get approvals at board meetings. Checked every minute. Asked Jeff, and couldn't find it, because all they did was get a building permit. They did no certificate of appropriateness, no follow-through, no nothing. Now I'm stuck with Fenway Park wall in my backyard, and then this god-awful chain link fence 18 inches inside of that. Now we all know what the laws are on fences, historic or not. What's the courtesy and what's the thing that we do with fences in all communities? You face the good side of the fence towards the neighbor, correct? We all understand that? Yes? Okay? But nowhere in the law does it direct you implicitly what you do with the old fence. Now, if we consider leaving, because Jeff said, well, there's no law. Well, my feelings on that were we can't legislate stupid all the time. Who leaves a chain link fence on the inside? Because this could have, this...
You don't want to say so please.
No, I'm just...
You never even brought this up to us personally, so this is a bad place to bring this up.
Well, I don't have any other place to bring it up, because I've gone and I've asked, and if there had been this, it's not on you guys. You guys aren't here to enforce the laws. I get that part. But if they had followed the two procedures, the certificate of appropriateness, and they also specify in the law that you're going to have a public hearing where neighbors are notified, and you can have comment. If there had been comments or things, we could have reached a compromise beyond when this was just thrown in there like that. And it doesn't matter at this point, because this is, it's just giving me the resolve. I want to move. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. It looks so horrible on that side of the fence. And I get it. I get it. But an 8-foot fence, there isn't another 8-foot fence in the village that I know. 6 foot and remove the old fence, and I would have worked with it to figure out a way to block the rest. So I could have put down my wrought iron fence across the back, at least over to the other part. But it was never, the procedures were never followed. So if we're going to move forward, there's got to be some kind of oversight in that gap time, because the laws still exist, but nobody enforces them. And I was told by Jeff that there's no law that says they can't leave that chain link fence there. And I was like, really? But anyways, my only comment is to fair enforcement and do the due diligence and do the work. Because all the code enforcement guys, so I looked from Main Street and I couldn't see anything. There's more views than just Main Street, especially when you have a side street like that. So, I'm sorry, Margaret and I, but there's probably no resolution to it at this point. I don't think it was done appropriately at all. If you ever look from our side of the fence, it is god awful. The view is god awful. No, it is. So anybody who wants to take a walk by, take a look, you see what you think. But I'm gonna sell my property in a year or two, move out and build a new place to be out in the country, and I don't have to worry about things like this anymore. And for those left behind. But anybody else?
I might, just before you start. As previous Mayor Kevin pointed out to us, this is the opportunity for the citizens to address the board on their concerns about this. This is not the opportunity for give and take and back and forth in the audience or in front of the speaker or for amongst each other. So that's what we're going to do.
Really just kind of comments about the local law. Richard Van Holcomb, 6 Front Street. But I think you do have to think about color please clarify that in this thing, because I do not think that any colors whatsoever should be okay, because I don't want to get in a pissing match with my neighbor and have them do like a polka dot line in the pink house. And there are people who will do that. So you need to deal with that in some way. And obviously, never turned anything down. I used to be in the Navy, never turned anything down. But if you get someone who wants to screw you over at any cost to themselves, they'll do it, and they'll cost you $50,000 off the price of your house. So I think you got to have something in there that state tax or something comes to the board, and the board, I think you already have that anyways, that controls things like that. Thank you.
This isn't maybe so much a law comment, but just if people have concerns, I just wanted to say that if you go with a color palette, they could say, oh, but this color would look, I mean, you could get great friendly advice. If you go in with a shingle, it could be, there's this other product on the market, have you thought about that? So if you think about this as a resource and a source of information and valuable advice and not just some administrative body, then hopefully it will not seem so scary, because it is important to protect these things, and the commission is really there to help.
We're headquartered in Albany, but I'm their local representative. I live in Bristol. And I've been assisting the VOO Historic Preservation Committee in trying to get this law written for legal and passed. The Preservation Link helped write this new model law in 2014, and we're also committed to helping communities form that law to meet their needs. So with regard to paint colors, I kind of knew that that was going to be a big question this evening. The official stance of the Preservation League is that we shouldn't be regulating paint colors for homeowners. So just so you know that. And I see that there are two places in the local law that address paint colors specifically. And one does say pre-approved colors, and the other one says that we don't. So, you know, we can come back from the league and help clarify this law so that people are satisfied and so that the law does what it's intended to do. But I also just want to thank you for considering this law this evening, and thank you for every single person who turned out to speak about it.
I have just one question since we're on that. Sure. Does it not also specify the brand of paint?
No.
Does it say California?
No.
When we moved in and we purchased our home, there was no historic preservation. It was gone. So we're new to this. So there are a lot of things out there. You can read what's in there. We kind of see that it says one thing and it says another thing. And it says two different things. You hear other things also that either have been enforced or not enforced. So we're trying to figure it out. I want to know. Do I have to buy it from Waka? Is that going to be told to me? Okay. I'm just letting you know from our perspective, moving in and not been a part of it. There's a lot out there. I'm just letting you know.
I'm John Spencer from 187 Front Street, the River Road Bookstore, probably pumpkin color. I take pride in that building and I want to preserve it. I need you to have your law to help protect it. My investment and how it stay.
I can speak from here as well. Mark Cabuco, 9 Front Street. Like Dave Allen and Mike Wold and many more people. I was chair of the commission for a long time. I was there for nearly 9 years. Paint color was something we never ever told somebody you can't paint something a particular color. What we would typically do was ask would you glance or would you look at this? As far as I'm aware, I've seen half a dozen or more. Every paint manufacturer has what they call a historic palette. It's got virtually every color you'd imagine, but they're fairly true to supposedly scientific, I don't know, to what was available, say, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. It's what you might have seen at that time. But again, there's a beige, there's a blue, there's 3 blues, there's 4 grays, there's about every color you'd imagine. But it saved us time because we didn't have to do any research to say that there's something on this palette that appeals to you. And I was there 9 years. I missed maybe 1 or 2 meetings. I know that no one went away angry. No one went away and said, I'm having to paint my house a color I don't like. What we effectively insisted on was understanding what you wanted to do for the records. So it went down on paper. Most of our records, unfortunately, were lost to the flood. We got some bad advice and stuff never got raised up, and the water came in and stuff was just ruined. The records are gone. But we had good records for, I'm not sure it was 50 years, because I never looked. But we had good records for a long time. The concept of using the Historic Preservation Commission as a resource is essentially its purpose. That's why. And we did have, and the new, any new commission will have people who are trained, people who are experienced, who are homeowners themselves in almost every instance, historic homeowners themselves in most instances, who've been through a lot of this stuff, and who have really good recommendations that will save you time and trouble and save the features of the house, which, as Dave spoke about porches, second floors, have a look at a couple of examples. The American Legion building. I don't know when that was done, but that was a monumental building. At one time, that building was a spectacular building on Front Street, a monumental building. It serves its purpose, and I'm not just sure what discussions were had when it got taken apart, but it's difficult to look at the building and not imagine what it ought to look like, used to look like, and ought to look like. A small village like ours can't stand too many egregious mistakes like that, for we get to be looking like so many of the villages, towns, and hamlets around us, even cities around us, who would pretty much let anybody do whatever they wanted. And downtown Binghamton has a gorgeous building, and what is that? And another gorgeous building. And we don't, we never fell prey to that, because at the time some people were doing all that building, I think we didn't have any money. But as a consequence, the historic district is pretty much intact. There just isn't much infill. And people who own these homes and own the business district buildings are proud of them, have maintained them, and that's all we're looking for, is the ability to get that done. Thank you.
Jim Oberheiser, 260 Main Street. I'm a current member of the OHPAC, and I'm speaking now to represent, get this right, the OHPOA, which is the Owego Historic Properties Owners Association, which is a community group that the last time we were all together as a board and discussing local law that had to do with preservation, it was a group that was formed for property owners to figure out initiatives that we could do to, on a grassroots level, kind of help an awareness and a preservation of the village without the law being our driving force, but education being our driving force. So that's the Owego Historic Property Owners Association. We have some of their members. Membership is free. We have no budget, but we have some of our members here, the people that showed up to show that similar interest in the education about that. So we're here, and I'm here to speak for them, that we support your passing this law.
Anybody else?
possible to go around and have every homeowner sign something stating they want it or they don't want it?
That was part of the survey, right?
That's a question for Nate, right?
Right, so, again, I
What
mentioned
survey?
this previously. The intent of this local law's adoption was to really change the administrative procedures that affected the granting of certificates of appropriateness and how we went about that. It wasn't to change the existing boundaries or properties that are already included. I think if we were to consider changing the boundaries or which properties are in it and which aren't, then we need to reset everything and really, I mean, go through that type of a survey process and ask, who's who would like to be in it, and then also do the, I think, that community building survey. And I know it's been referenced multiple times. There's this big book of properties that are all in this historic district with nice detailed descriptions of why they are relevant or why this particular street should be included. And at the end of the day, there are properties, even back when this was initially adopted, that you might look at it and say, well, it's not really a historic property, but just where it's located and what it's surrounded by would still result in it being included. So it's not, there isn't no guarantee often that you could just simply opt out.
No, I'm not saying opt out.
Like this.
I'm saying people who want this OHPC back or people who do not want it back.
Oh, you mean to literally do like a survey
Of people
that
who
would be
own
sent out?
historic property.
Like maybe-
Actually, everybody in the village, because reading this document, any property can be made historic without the homeowner's approval of that. No, it says in here that they can make any property historic.
I think they're gonna take that part out, so you gotta make sure that that's
As part of the historic process, I scanned all 3,900 images of the historic properties and the way they used to look, and all of the Cornell surveys. And the Cornell surveys, like our house, for example, is considered not appropriate because the owners opted out at the time. Otherwise, it would have been appropriate. So everybody had a chance to vote when the Cornell surveys were done. So that has already happened. And now the impact on values and the like that have been discussed by others change the equation. There was such a survey originally.
Second survey from 20 years ago,
More than that.
so there's different people.
But the whole value equation has changed. You can't, there's no way to evaluate. And when people are making,
I'd just like to make a brief comment and encourage the board to act tonight. There are always issues. I don't know any issue in society that you can't debate until we're all dead. Because there's always something else, one more thing that somebody comes up. The reference to paint colors is easy. You can pass a resolution and simply approve it and exclude any references to paint colors in the ordinance, and that puts that to sleep. You can always revisit all kinds of issues, but the CLG status is really important. And I know this answers the question that she asked. There's no such thing as an abatement for having the historic property, at least not in Owego. Nobody abates your property taxes. But there are tax credits available, both from the federal government and for the state government, but you have to start out by being a CLG. If you live in, again, I'm not knocking Canada or Talga Center, that's great, but you're not going to ever get them because they're not available to people who don't live in a CLG community. So to make those programs available, and I know twice in our history we've been able to,
submit the appropriate applications to the state government and in a previous case to the federal government and get a project approved, which led to tax credits for us for what we did. But the important thing for you is to just move ahead now and get rid of this advisory commission, which only slows everything down, adds a minimum of an extra month to the application process, and go back to a system that worked not only for us, but for other municipalities across the state of New York. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Portalot. We moved here 2 years ago. We relocated for a job in the area. When we were deciding where to move, we chose Owego because what we have in this community is different than what the towns around us have. So I want to say thank you to those of you who come before and worked hard to make sure that Owego is distinct, unique, and a draw to people to this area. I know that we each have our own budgets to think about and our own design desires for our homes, but I think that what's in this proposed document states that we have the opportunity to talk about this with our neighbors. It doesn't seem to me to be heavy-handed in the way that we can't work through our differences. If we want to continue to be a thriving community, we have to draw in people who are interested in what we have to offer. And this is a gift that has come to us from those who've worked before. I'd like to see it continue, and I hope that we can all work together to make this a great place to raise our families and to live our lives. So thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you to those who made it possible.
I can read the room, I understand that part. I don't know if we were your neighbors 8 years ago.
Yes.
Next door to you, at 3 Front Street. The LeBarons own that home. And I thought it was funny, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I just wanted out there and known. When we moved into that house, we were renters at the time, but we moved sight unseen. We knew we wanted to be here because of the community, what is on it. So, we don't want that to go away. Don't misunderstand when I ask these questions what I'm saying. But I do distinctly remember when we moved in, I'm like, why are there 4 different color schemes painted on the back of the house? And the exact words from Mr. LeBaron were, I'm waiting for them to come approve and tell me which one I can paint. That was firsthand.
8 years ago, I was there, and this,
It's not, or whoever was next door to the LeBarons.
I'm next door to
3 Front Street.
I'm in,
It was before, it was in 2010 when we moved here.
no, 2010, I was chair. I mean, Mr. LeBaron was incorrect, no application.
I'm just,
Whoever the they was, it wasn't the OHPC.
does anybody know who that day was? Why would they be painting and asking color to be approved? If it wasn't that organization?
Mr. LeBaron, come up and excuse drawing that paint shop.
I very well may have been it. I can only tell you what I was told. And I lived in that house, so that's why I was asking.
By the way, how do you like to draw?
Oh.
Hate it.
I do?
She wanted to buy that house back.
For the record, 359, we do like our house color. So just so you know, we're fine with our house color. I like it. I just don't want
my house color.
Yeah, I just don't want somebody telling me what color I can paint it, should I want to paint it. That's objective. So,
And I think it's great that you guys are asking questions, truly, because the only way we're all going to understand it is if we come talk together. Not just this issue, it's lots of issues that are going to impact all of us. So I do applaud you for asking questions. It's great when you don't know how everybody else in the room feels. So,
Well, just to the point, I know one gentleman said we need to vote on it and you guys need to approve it. I get that, but that sounds a lot like we'll read it and follow it after you approve it. That's not what I'm asking for. Obviously, it's going to happen. I mean, I can already read it. I'm not that naive. I just want it to be spelled out and it be correct so there isn't this gray area. That's what I don't want.
I don't like the 30 and 60 days in jail either.
Oh, can I mention that I'm not aware of a fine ever having been levied, ever, in the 50 years? Never, ever?
Well, I thought maybe that's where you were going to get your funds to fund the position.
That'll be from a grant.
Does someone else want to come to the podium?
Is there anybody else?
yeah, I'll just I don't know if I need to go to the podium, but there's a couple loose threads that I'm going to attempt to do. You know, I think we're closer to being on the same page, or not on the same page about the color. What I said is what I meant and what I believe. That if there is language in here, I think what the pre-approved in that section of the law about this preservation plan, or if we ever got one, that meant that like you're painting the house the same color that it is right now, and you don't need to go and discuss it. The other part of it is, and Cindy, about what you said about the color of the shingles and all that, one of the jobs of the commission is to keep a record of what Peter, on his own time and his own dime, standing at his dining room table, making digital copies of all the history. We keep track of the changes and the stuff that's done to the houses. It's minutiae. It's what I call administrivia. But in the long run, when people are doing historical studies and people come to us sometimes saying, what was that paint color that my neighbor, we sometimes have that stuff, and it's easy to help, or even people forget themselves. So we are history keepers also, and that's a part of the job that we don't really, nobody really sees very much, but it's still an important part. The other thing, we do have currently a member of the advisory committee who is a historian, who has extensive knowledge about color palettes. She can look at a building and tell you what year it was built, and she can say, oh, basically these are the colors that these buildings had. We like to be able, we're going to make, out of that knowledge, we're going to make an extensive color palette of many different manufacturers, divided into different eras, to share with people, to say, just FYI, here's some stuff that you can look at. The other part of this is the appearance of the whole community. The word complementary, and this is what Dick was speaking about, is important too. About painting your color in a way that is complementary to perhaps the other ones. Something for you to take into account as being a good neighbor. And that's the direction that we're all trying to head on into here. This law was adapted from the state. There's there's language in it that there's things in it that in case the law, people need to use it, it's there to help. Some of the stuff is about people that are might come into the village, absentee landlords that might come in to chop up some of our beautiful homes and just leave town, not pay their taxes and things like that. And so, yeah, I don't like the 60-day jail sentence. I would never want to see somebody in that. But we consulted with the city of Binghamton, and this is one of the ways that they can keep people in line from doing really bad things to the houses and neighborhoods. Having that kind of stuff in there is what we call teeth in the law. It's there, God forbid we ever had to use it. But if you don't have something like that, you don't have anything to go after some of those people and to keep neighborhoods from deteriorating. Kind of thinking in the long term, But let's see, what else? Was there something else? Was there anything else you want? Is there anything else that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I'd like to go around to every resident in the village.
Well, this is the legal process that we're going through right now with the public hearing. This is I wanted to do that when we were abolished, and I was told that this is the way you get a local law passed. So we're doing the same process that was hard for us to go through too. And Nate can talk about that, but I've learned through going through this process is that this public hearing is very important, but it's a process of how we pass our local laws and how we talk to each other, as citizens, and how we try to disagree respectfully with each other and agree. The thing about the survey. The word survey, survey isn't, the way that we use it as we refer to the Cornell survey, it's really, the word study could be substituted for that. It's not really a survey going door to door asking if people want to be in the historic district. The way the boundaries of the historic district are set by law. And I don't know how that could be undone or why we would even want to unravel that. This is something that has been worked on, starting with the architectural district. John Spencer, you could probably talk. Where's John? I know he's somewhere. Yeah, he could talk about some of the people who were here in the beginning can talk about that.
we've been building up. There are places all over this country that would love to have a community that would come together and create historic districts, and we were able actually to do it. And like the CLG, it would be a terrible thing to walk away from. It would be very detrimental. So let's keep this somehow. We need to be more specific, as I said, to add the addendum to make it really clear what the boundaries are. But the boundaries are what they are, including the exclusions that they are right now.
I'm going to speak from the microphone in case my daughter's watching the live stream from California. I'd like to thank Mayor Beretta and the Board of Trustees for looking at this issue, which is very important to the village on historic preservation. Nobody likes to be told what to do, especially with your house. I'm sure that the board has struggled with the drafting of this law and looking at it and took Shippo's advice on drafting it. I remember coming to Owego for the first time in 1970 when I was a student at SUNY Binghamton, and they used to own Spencer Lake up in Spencer. Our auxiliary campus enterprise owned it, and they had a picnic place and a place to swim. I remember coming by on the bus and looking at the homes along Front Street, and I didn't know much about architecture, but I could tell that they needed a lot of TLC and a lot of paint. And I didn't come back to Owego really almost for another 15 years when I took a job down in Sayre, and I was astonished at the transformation. The buildings were repaired, improved, and painted, and looked really nice. The history of the houses in Owego precedes the present owners and will remain here when those owners leave. These homes represent the covenant by the present with the past and the future. Many lives will pass through their doors and hopefully will pass through in the future. I'd like to think that the values of past owners and builders are reflected upon and appreciated by current and future owners. Just as no man or woman is an island unto themselves, no house is an island unto itself in a neighborhood. Each house affects its neighbors, its neighborhood, both close and far, and also the historic district in some way. An example that I wasn't going to give, but I'm into it now. about integrity. You know, if I used to be a car guy and have cars back when you could afford them before they had a computer on 4 wheels. If you had a 1957 Thunderbird that was intact in original shape, you would not put a Chevy 327 into that to make it go faster. Why? Because of integrity. The same thing holds true with a house. With every architectural detail and piece is the key to understanding its past and respecting its integrity. Now, I've lived here for a while at 78 Front Street, and I know it's been a divisive issue at times in the past and recently. I hope that this law is passed tonight, and I hope that goodwill, good intentions, and the spirit of cooperation that the village and its residents can get back on track to working to historic preservation, which with the DRI coming in is even more important than ever. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Everybody's good? Close the public hearing. So, I guess the next step is discussion on the board about the law. So I see some language that can clarify the law, like the district. It's hard to figure out the district laws. The maps I found, didn't match verbiage that are current.
I think the question that I have is how we move forward tonight if we do have things that are changes that we want to make to the law as is currently drafted, like removing, from page 11, reference to color, or removing any reference to color if you will.
So my recommendation would be, especially if we want to change the process in the local laws as drafted for the designation of the historic districts. I mean, it does lay out a pretty detailed process right now for charter that, then I need to revise this law to say, presumably we'd like their advice about what the commissioners and what the boundaries should be, or new parcels to add to it, but essentially making them advisory for that portion of it. And then I'd still likely keep much of the criteria, at least for the village board, to guide them in considering where the boundary line should be specifically. In addition, I think we want, there's been the expression that we should include a direct reference in this local law to those boundaries. We can do that, but I want to actually put it in there and then make sure everyone's in agreement. And yes, in fact, we've accurately described it right now. I'm concerned that the map doesn't match what the laws have said for the past two versions of it. I don't know exactly when the former commission, before it became advisory, I don't know exactly when that law was adopted, but my understanding is the boundary descriptions of that don't match the map. And so, I would like to get some further clarification about just even exactly what boundaries are. We've got those maps, but I asked Rod to go back through the minutes of the prior meetings to see.
But under the current draft, that is something that could theoretically be, or would be delegated to the new commission
Right.
to straighten all of that out. Right?
Right.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that this village board has every intention of reestablishing an historic preservation commission. I believe they have every intention of having the village be back on CLG. And I believe that a number of board members, if not all board members,